leadership. What does it mean to be a service leader in an organization that is committing itself to differentiating from the competition by building an uplifting service culture? A culture where everybody's taking action to create more value for somebody else, whether it's an external customer or an internal colleague in the same department or in another department. That roof, the place that I put leadership at the top, I put it there because if there is a leak, if you have a great foundation and you put all the building blocks in place and you create a solid culture, but the roof leaks, what happens to the house? It rots, it damages, it eventually collapses and falls down. So let's take a look at this issue of service leadership. Your role, your job. The 7 rules of service leadership. Now, leadership can be expressed at any level. You don't have to be somebody who's the managing director or the CEO or the executive vice president in order to take the lead in service. Why do I say that? Well, certainly people who are in that position have a lot of ability, a lot of authority, a lot of role, position to be able to lead the organization. But is it also possible for someone who's at the front line to take the lead in responding to a customer situation and say, I'll be your champion for that inside the bank? Is that possible? Absolutely. And they don't need to be the boss. Is it possible for anyone to take the lead in setting the mood for their department for the day? Right? Can't you just deliberately walk in one day and say, good morning, how are you, nice to see you? Now, people may think you're a little strange, but you could actually take the lead. You don't need to be the leader in order to take the lead in service. Very, very important point. Now, the 7 rules of service leadership are specific behaviors that I've noticed great leaders of service organizations consistently do. And here's what the 7 are. Let's take a look at them, and then you'll have a chance to discuss at your table. So number 1, declaration is what makes new things possible. In the United States, it was called the Declaration of Independence. When somebody says, I now declare you husband and wife, it changes the world. When the judge says guilty or not guilty, it's a declaration. Right? So a leader in an organization like yours needs to be the one who declares service is now a top priority. Well, that's important when you're looking to change the culture of an organization that has been known for sales, or has been known for speed or productivity, or has been known only for product innovation, or operational excellence, or safety. Anytime we go to work with an organization that wants to shift and become differentiated and known for outstanding service culture, then the senior leaders have to make that a clear declaration. Is that a behavior of yours? Would staff say that about you? Let's pause for a moment. Talk to the person across the table. Think and be honest. If we were to check to all the people who report to you, would they say that you say that service is a top priority? Or would they say, yeah, the boss deals with that, but only if it's a problem, only when a customer has a complaint? Be honest. Ready? Talk to the person across the table. What would your team say about you? Rule number 2, service leadership. Rule number 2, be a great role model, walk the talk. You know the expression, action speaks louder than words. So if you're doing rule number 1, declare, but then they look and see what you actually do, and you're not actually behaving that way, then all the words go out the window. Now, at the end of the program today, I'll give you some very specific examples of things that you can do that are walk the talk, so that your staff see that you actually believe it. They hear the words you say, they watch the things that you write, they notice how you are with somebody when they're upset, they see how you spend your time. What would be one example of somebody in this organization demonstrating service leadership by walking the talk, what would it look like? What would it sound like? What would it show up like in a real situation? Either external customer facing or internal service between colleagues, between different departments. Ready? Again, talk to the person across the table. What would be an example of rule number 2 of service leadership coming alive inside this bank? Go. Rule number 3 in service leadership is promote a common service language. Now, in an organization like yours, each function, each division, each department has its own technical language. There's a language of real estate. There's a language of lending. There's a language of insurance. There's a language of mortgage. There's a language of credit card. There's a language of... We're talking here about promoting a common service language. And as you could see before the break, it's produced by the service education. So, for example, there are 6 levels of service. The lowest one is criminal. Then basic. Followed by expected, desire, and unbelievable. Right? I mean, just in a very short period of time, you have learned a certain common language. But as quickly as it made sense, it could also fade away, right, unless it was consistently promoted. And that's one of the rules of service leadership. So what would be an example? Where could you as a leader use that language, promote that language, ask other people to use that language? Use that language in a way that makes other things clear, that helps people to coordinate better with each other, to understand each other better, to choose new action to take with each other. Work with your colleague across the table. As a service leader, where could you actually promote the use of a common service language? Ready? You and your partner. Go. The 4th rule is called measure what really matters. There are many things that you can measure. You can measure churn, you can measure sales, you can measure profitability, you can measure external service performance, you can measure how long something takes, you can measure accuracy, you can measure margin. I mean, you can measure a lot of different things. But if you're looking to build an uplifting service culture, you have to be very careful about what it is that you tell your staff you're paying attention to as a leader. What is it that you say really matters? So if you say what really matters is top-line revenue and bottom-line profit, what message does that send to the staff? What's most important? The money, okay, not the service. So that is important. It's one of the ultimate business objectives, along with shareholder value and reputation. But it's a lagging indicator. It comes after everything else that you've done. A leading indicator of those ultimate objectives would be your survey scores, your satisfaction score, your loyalty index, your employee engagement score, right? If those are going up, you're going to get the ultimate objectives. But even that is somewhat lagging because you don't go survey everybody every day. There is another indicator. There is something that could let you know that you're moving in the right direction, and that's positive customer feedback. If you're getting a lot of compliments, if you're getting a lot of input, if people are saying, ooh, I like it, and thank you for doing that, if that's coming in abundance, not only from external customers, but even between colleagues, then you know your survey scores are going to go up, which is going to lead you to the ultimate objectives. So now you can see you've got comments, which precede survey scores, which precede ultimate objectives. Here's the big question. What is it that has to happen before you even get a compliment? What is the necessary precursor, the required first step that results in a compliment that leads to a score that leads to the profitability? It's got to be some action that was taken that created some value that was above and beyond what the other person expected. So someone needs to look at a situation, and someone who needs something, come up with a new idea, take a new action step, produce the value, get the compliment, get the scores, get the profitability, and ultimate business objectives. You see how that works? Now, if I go to the thousands of people who work in this organization and I ask them, in today's world, what does senior leadership pay most attention to, what would they say? The numbers. That's the culture that exists today. But you're looking to deliberately shift that culture now to be focused on service differentiation. Uplifting service is the culture. So then what is it that we need to let the staff know really matters? What is it we should be measuring as a service leader? Is it just the numbers? Or should we be watching the scores and counting the feedback and actually keeping track of how many new ideas and new actions have we taken to create more value for someone else? As an uplifting service leader in this organization, you need to let your staff know that you're measuring what really matters. I want you to have a conversation at your table right now. How do you see that apply in this organization? How do you see you could apply that in a way that the staff that work with you say, hey, you know what the boss really cares about? You know what really matters? It's what are we doing today? What action do you take that creates more value for someone else? Conversation at your table. The fifth rule of service leadership, that one of those critical behaviors that a service leader needs to do in an organization, is called enable and empower your team. Now, let me ask, in this part of the world, is that word empower, empowerment, is it something familiar to you? Of course it is. Anybody who reaches a leadership position has heard this word, empower your team. You know, empowerment is important. What's the challenge around the word empowerment? Why is it that some leaders hesitate to empower, to give authority, to give responsibility, to give people the freedom, to make a decision, to take some action? What is it that would cause you to hesitate? Yeah, fear. Fear. If you're afraid that the person that you empower might do the wrong thing, make a mistake, make a bad decision. You know, if you can't be sure that that person is going to make a good decision, you would naturally hesitate to give them empowerment. Clear. But let's look at this the other way. If you could be absolutely sure that somebody could make a good decision, they understood, they could think well, they would come up with a good thing to do. If you could be sure, would you gladly empower them? Yes or no? Absolutely. So, how do you know that someone can make a good decision? What is it that you would need to do in order to give yourself the confidence as a leader that, in fact, they could make a good decision in whatever situation arises? Yeah, very good. You would have to take responsibility for doing what? For what? For educating them, for coaching them and mentoring them and supporting them and helping them work through issues. And even if they make a mistake, you would say, great, let's learn from that together so that the next time you can make a better decision. That's why this rule is not empower your team. It's, as a service leader, take responsibility to enable and empower your team. Now, let me be clear. When I talk about the sixth rule of service leadership out of 7, and it says remove the roadblocks to service, I'm not saying to remove yourself. I'm saying that over time, especially in an organization like yours that's grown so fast, and promoted so many products and produced so many sales and so much profitability in such a short period of time that there can be certain structures that end up in place that actually don't make it easy to go outside the structure. You end up putting process in place that looks like tomorrow should be like yesterday, which is like today, and now you're asking them to be flexible. And now you're asking them to be more personalized in the way you respond to someone. And now we're asking them to come up with some new action that will produce a complement, but they could look at all of the structures and the process and the procedures and say, hey, wait a minute, I can't do that. Unless you as the leader say, yes, you can. But boss, what about? And you say, no, let me explain. That can actually be removed in a certain situation. Now, not randomly, but we're saying it's your job to listen for the frustrations of your staff. It's your job to anticipate what could get in their way. It's your job to listen for example, a customer complaint about the way something was handled, and instead of looking at who was the staff member and what did they do, you look at, well, what was the situation in which the staff member chose that, and what did they see was getting in their way of doing something else? That's the roadblock to service. What would be some examples of that in this organization? When you think about who you are and what your department does and how quickly you've grown, there's a lot of practice there. There's a lot of procedure there. There's a lot of process that's already in place. Could any of that look like a roadblock to doing something differently than your staff have normally done? Could you, as a service leader, take the lead in helping to remove the roadblock to service so that while we're educating and encouraging people to take new action, they won't say, but I can't. Why not? Because of, well, that would be the roadblock to service. And it's your job as a leader to help make that go away. What would be an example of some of the roadblocks your staff face today? Rule number 7 in the 7 rules of service leadership is sustain the focus and enthusiasm for uplifting service. Let's face it, there are a lot of things in daily working life that can distract people from service. There are a lot of things that can kind of push people back and slow people down. It's like sand in the gears. Your job is not only to remove the roadblocks, not only to promote the common language, but sustain that focus and enthusiasm over time. So what are some ways that you can do that? Well, when you educate people, that promotes. When you recognize people, pat on the back, that promotes. When you are a great role model, that promotes. When you take the lead and you acknowledge other people when they take the lead, that promotes and sustains the enthusiasm for service. Every organization, every part of the world, every industry has certain rituals and practices and protocol for the way we do things, right? Think about you and what it's like to work for you. What is it like to come to work on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in this part of the world? And is there a morning kickoff? Is there an end of the day huddle? Is there a midweek acknowledgement? Is there an end of the week celebration? Or is it just go to work, do your job? How are the numbers? Do more. I mean, be honest. What could you do or could you do better that would help sustain the focus and enthusiasm on what we're asking people to do, which is take new action to create more value for someone else? Then someone has to be paying attention to taking action to create value for them. And that person's job is you.